Hi guys, did you bring your flip-flops? Good, because today we are going to Hezekiah's tunnel. Come on, let's go. This is Hezekiah's tunnel. Do you know why they built it? It turns out that around 726 to 697 BC, Jerusalem was surrounded by Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, and Hezekiah decided to protect the water source for the city by changing the path of the water from the spring of Gihon that was outside the walls of Jerusalem. Just imagine, the tunnel was built with hammer and chisel.
Wow, I can't even imagine how much work that was. But of course, back then, they didn't have the tools that exist today.
It's true. Well, historians also believe that the tunnel was carved because the builders followed a crack in the mountain. If they had followed it in a straight line, they would have saved more than 100 meters of extra work, and the tunnel would have been only 320 meters long instead of 523 meters.
Yes, David, the Bible mentions Hezekiah in 2 Kings 20:20, where it says that he made a pool and a conduit and brought water into the city. Also, in 2 Chronicles 32:30, we read that Hezekiah was the one who stopped the upper watercourse of Gihon and brought it straight down to the west side of the city of David.
It's said that King Hezekiah organized two teams of diggers who began digging this tunnel between Jerusalem and the Gihon Spring. Each team started at a different end, and at some point along the more than half a kilometer path, they met. They even carved their story into the tunnel wall. And it still exists. It's just in a museum in Istanbul. Well, we've arrived to where the tunnel divides. One tunnel carries the water to the Shiloah pool, and the other tunnel is dry and takes us to where the fountain was. Through this dry side of the tunnel, we'll go down to the part that was outside the city. This is where the water source is. Because this spring was outside the walls of Jerusalem, there were always guards on the walls to protect the water. They also built an additional wall just to protect the water from their enemies. Hezekiah knew that this was a weak point of the city, and that's why, when the Assyrians surrounded it, he chose to let the water enter the city through the tunnel he built.
Did you know that kings were brought to this fountain to be anointed? Yes, it was here that Solomon was anointed king, and other kings of Judah were anointed here as well. By the way, Psalms 2 verse 2 speaks of the anointed of Jehovah, and the book of Acts confirms that Christ is the anointed of Jehovah. He was anointed when he came up out of the water after his baptism. However, the psalmist tells us that the anointed one would be mistreated by the people, and that all would go away and plot evil against him. But at this time, we have the sure promise that the rocks will be our place of refuge, just as God provided a refuge for the children of old.
I, for one, want to follow him. But I want to go to the tunnel that leads to the water. Come on, let's go!
Oh, the water is cold! How deep is it?
Don't worry, Hannah. The water's only up to your knees. How nice to be able to be in this pool. But I imagine it to be bigger. Isn't this the pool where Jesus sent the blind man to wash the clay from his eyes?
Yes, according to John chapter 9, verses 1 to 12, this is where Jesus sent the blind man to be healed. And yes, the pool was much bigger before. The thing is that we haven't come to an agreement with the Greek Orthodox Church that owns the land, and most of the pool is still covered.
You know something? Just as the Assyrians intimidated the Israelites with threats and blasphemies, so the Jews tried to intimidate Jesus and his disciples in the same way.
Hey, listen to what the following verse says in Psalms, chapter 2, verse 4. He who dwells in the heavens will laugh. The Lord will mock them. Why does it say this? I don't understand.
Look, David, that's an expression to say that God would not be mocked. On the contrary, Jesus would come out of the tomb no matter what people said. Jesus declared that he had the power to give his life and to take it back again. When Jesus died, the chief priests and Pharisees remembered that Jesus had said he would rise on the third day. They told Pilate and asked him to send more soldiers to guard Christ's tomb. The priests thought that the disciples would steal his body and then deceive the people by telling them that Jesus had risen.
Ha! That's crazy. So many soldiers to take care of a dead man?
It's true, yes, but all those soldiers felt the earthquake and saw Jesus come out of the tomb. Satan wanted to stop Jesus from resurrecting, but the more soldiers were guarding the tomb, the greater the testimony of his resurrection would be.
Praise God! No one could keep Jesus in the tomb. Jesus conquered death, and now he's in heaven at the right hand of God, interceding for us.
Yes, but very soon he will return to judge this earth. We'll see a little cloud in the heavens. At first, it will seem to be about the size of half of a man's hand. That cloud, made of thousands of angels, will get bigger and bigger as it nears the earth until it fills the entire sky. This time, Jesus is coming as a great conqueror, not as a helpless child, nor as a wounded and suffering man. No, this time, Jesus comes as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The book of Revelation symbolically describes the second coming of Jesus as having him ride on a white horse, with a sharp sword coming out of his mouth to smite the nations and judge the whole world.
How interesting that this king who once rode on a donkey now comes in victory to end pain and evil and to take us to heaven. How wonderful it will be to see him coming in the clouds. Well, kids, in today's activity, write down 5 signs of Jesus' coming and talk about them. Also in class, discuss how you can prepare for Jesus' coming, for Jesus' second coming. See you next week. Goodbye.